Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. So, my name is Sheridan Barry, and I am the Business Operations and P&C Director at Talenza. For those of you who don't know us, we are a recruitment agency that specialises in technology, digital, and business transformation. So, every couple of months, we hold a webinar just like this to help our network, which is people like you, tackle your big challenges. And this month, we're looking at how conversations that you have with your team can have transformative effects on your workplace relationships. These conversations can help to build greater engagement, greater commitment, and create stronger bonds that inspire and motivate our employees. We all know as a leader that connecting with our team is one of the most important things that we can do. So there's no surprises that in today's remote and hybrid working world, that there's this feeling of disconnection, which has the potential to impact our working relationships. But between 9 to 32% of staff turnover can be avoided with better leadership. On top of this, learning how to manage conversations at all areas within a business helps you to build relationships and elevate your executive presence. So to help us better understand the steps that help to create these better connections and build our leadership capability, we've invited Ellen Hooper, the co-founder and director at the Growth Collective, to share her experiences. Ellen is a people and culture expert, an award-winning ICF accredited coach and people leader. She's an accredited mediator, a passionate speaker who loves to help individuals and groups to grow and develop. So Ellen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for giving us your time. I'm personally really excited and looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us in terms of how we can take our leadership conversations to the next level. So do you want to kick us off with this conversation, perhaps by starting with the some context around the 4 steps that drive performance?
Yeah, I did. I'm really excited to talk about the 4 steps that drive performance. I also thought I'd share a little bit about my leadership journey. So over time, leadership for me has become something of a real passion, and I have studied leadership quite a lot. I do a lot of teaching and training in leadership. But I also, have had my own leadership practice leading teams at an executive level. And it's so interesting because sometimes the theory of leadership is much, much, much different, very different to the practice of leadership. And so I'm really proud of, and I'm proud of doing both of those things, so that when I do stand up in front of training rooms and people say, that all sounds very nice, but I was leading someone who had this particular challenge, or I'm in this organizational culture that's got this kind of particular quirk to it, I can usually go, oh yes, I've been there and I've felt that and I've done that.
Yeah.
So we obviously have some pre-prepared content for you today, but we've got a really luxurious amount of time together, and we will have lots of times at the end for questions. But I'd love to just A, make sure the chat function's working, and B, hear from you guys who are here live today. What are you hoping to get out of today's masterclass? So we know you've made the time to show up. Thank you so much. It's great to have you. If you want to pop in the chat what you're really hoping to get out of today, if we don't already have it covered, we'll make sure we pick it up in the questions, or we can spend a bit more time of it in the content that we're going through.
Absolutely.
Okay, amazing. All right. This is always, I'll take a little breath while hopefully people are typing.
Oh, I love it. The moment of pause.
Absolutely. And it's always that good experience with learning, and this is something you can share with your teams as well. With learning, you get out what you put in. So
Absolutely.
if you do have something that's on your mind, I really do encourage you to take this opportunity to let us know.
Love it.
There we go. All right, we'll keep watching that, and we have the excellent Renee who's helping us out today. So you'll let us know, Renee. Oh, here we go. Thanks, Emily. Perfect. So Emily's interested in addressing resistance and pushback from team members during challenging discussions. You're not alone, Emily. No problem. We'll pick that up. And cultivating a culture of open communication from Damien. Absolutely. We're definitely going to cover that. And connection within remote and hybrid work environments. I'm hearing so much about that. What about you, Shez? Is that a big issue that Talenza and you're finding as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's yeah, it's definitely a hot topic, and I'd be keen to hear your insights as you walk through this around how we can kind of navigate some of those challenges. It's definitely something that a wide range of people are experiencing at the moment.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we're gonna make sure we pick up when it doesn't all go perfectly. So thanks for that, Emily. We're going to make sure we pick up remote and hybrid. So you can nudge me, Shez. You can say how does that work in remote if I don't pick it up.
Sure.
New leaders, awesome. That's a great question. We might pick that up in the Q&A. Articulating leadership messages in a way that all staff can consume without the usual BS and business jargon. Thanks, Jill. What a great question. And I think that's a real cultural environment piece. So sometimes in different organizational environments, we use that business jargon because it's a way of being diplomatic. It's a way of being for people to hear us without like bringing up their defensiveness. And in some organizations, it doesn't work because some organizations really value like straight shooting and plain speaking. So that's such a great question. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Much appreciated. So I'll answer the question you actually asked me before, Shez.
I love it.
The 4 steps that drive performance. Okay, cool. So I love this framework. This is actually a framework we've developed at the Growth Collective. Like it's not rocket science. It's come from lots of different research from what lots of different like evidence and other practitioners tell us. And I've got here this little kind of moon cycle because I like this model because it's something that we do over and over and over again. And so much of leadership and leadership communication is actually about compassionate persistence. And there's a lot to be said for repetition. There's some beautiful change management research that actually we need to tell someone a message 7 times. Isn't that massive?
Mental.
Have you heard that before?
I have heard that, and people that I work with will be very familiar with me 7 times in multiple different ways, multiple different forums. Absolutely.
Awesome. And I reckon that's about 5 more times than we intuitively think that we need to say it. So when we can have repetition, things that we do over and over again, it's really good practical stuff we can put into practice. So it's easy for us as leaders to repeat. But also when we do repetition and rhythm, then our people know what to expect. And then that can really make things a lot easier, particularly when it comes to these difficult conversations. So the start of any sort of feedback and accountability is actually setting clear expectations. And I know that sounds so simple, but I find so many of us as leaders assume that people know what we want from them.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that when we set clear expectations, it's not just the work that needs to be done, it's also when it needs to be done. And you might also have some expectations about how it should be done or like the way that people conduct themselves. So we really can set expectations about performance. So like, what are we going to do? And conduct, which is like, okay, how do we expect you to do that? So setting really clear expectations. What is it that I need you to do? When do I need it to be done by? Answering the question at the start about what good looks like can be really helpful. And you might actually ask your people, hey, can you help me with this? I'm working on improving this particular skill. Can you, when I ask you about a task, could you ask me what good looks like? So we can be really clear about that. The other thing about setting clear expectations is it means that we have lots of confidence when we come to giving feedback. So often when we get a piece of work back or something happens in a meeting and we think, oh, that's not what I would have expected. Sometimes we can shy away from giving feedback because we might think maybe I haven't been clear enough. Maybe I wasn't clear enough about that. So it does start with setting expectations so that we can then actually say, that piece of work I asked you to do, I needed it back by Monday and I haven't got it by then.
Yep. The reference point, the baseline that you can then
Absolutely.
refer back to. Yep.
So feedback, we're going to talk about this a little bit more, is really important. Something that not everyone knows is there's some really good research on the praise to criticism ratio. And it's much higher than we think. So the research shows us in workplaces, it's actually research that started in marriages. So that's a fun tip for anyone who's in a partnership. And then was replicated in work environments. To be engaged, we actually want 5 pieces of positive feedback to 1 piece of constructive feedback. So that's actually quite a lot.
Yeah.
And what most of us are doing as leaders is we're saying, thank you, great job, good work. Okay, that's lovely. Good, like, don't stop doing that. But it's not specific. So what we really want to do with positive feedback is we want to specifically say, the way you wrote this was really concise. And what that meant was it was really easy to get that stakeholder on board. And then we can even go that further step, which is, I really notice this is a key strength of yours. Because
Absolutely.
I don't know about you, but I think that most people are not great at identifying their own strengths.
Oh no, I would agree. I think we as humans navigate and kind of default to the negative. How can we be better? How can we improve? Versus the wow, I did that. I did a really good job of that. Well done, pat on the back. And I think to your point there around identifying that the what they did that was so well helps to helps to identify that observable behavior that you can
Yeah.
then repeat over and over if it is a a good observable behavior. So I like that.
And the other thing about our strength is often things that we are strong at, we find quite, I'm going to say easy or effortless. They're not as hard for us. And so we can then discount them. We can think, oh, everyone can do this because I can do that really easily. So that must be something that everyone can do. So that's, if you take nothing else away from today, I'd love you to make a commitment to yourself to practice positive specific feedback. And it's such a good little takeaway because it's not scary. It's nice. It's a nice thing to do. And you'll really build the muscle of being able to be specific about delivering feedback, because you'll practice with positive. And when it comes time for you to say that didn't go as well as I thought it would, you'll have frameworks that you can use to be able to communicate that constructive feedback. So we are going to share with you a link at the end of today about a framework for giving free feedback that's on my website. So feel free to have a look. It's the STAR or SBI model, which some of you might have come across already. The other thing about giving feedback is it doesn't have to be long and drawn out. So, I just gave you some examples of positive feedback that was literally 1 or 2 sentences. So I think lots of times what holds us back is, I'll have to prepare. I don't have time. Maybe they'll cry, like all of that stuff. And particularly with constructive feedback, I would keep it really light, and when I say light, I mean short. And then my other big tip for feedback is managing our emotions around it. So sometimes we can feel really nervous about giving constructive feedback, and it signals to the other person that this is a really big deal.
Yep.
That this is has a lot of gravity to it, when actually it might just be that we find that difficult to do. And there's really amazing research. Human beings are really great at reading each other's kind of physical cues.
Yep.
So if we're in a room together, lots of us will actually sync our heartbeat rhythms.
Mhm. I like that.
So when we're getting ready for constructive feedback, we want to be really grounded to go. And Adam Grant has this great saying I'm going to talk to you guys about in a second. Okay, so we want to set expectations so we know what we're talking about. We want to give feedback, and we want to give lots of positive feedback, strength-based feedback. And then when something hasn't gone great, we want to tell people really quickly, as in don't wait 3 months. Tell them as soon as you can after the incident's happened. And then keep it light and clear. And then the thing we need to do, the thing we often miss as leaders, is holding people to account. Now, there's so much chat, I think, in organizations about accountability and driving out accountability. And I found that this is one of the things that lots of leaders understand conceptually that it's important and find it really hard practically to do. So we actually at the Growth Collective run a leadership fundamentals program, and workshop 5 is on holding people to account. So spend a whole half day on it. And it's usually people's favorite workshop of the whole 6 sessions that we run. And I'd love to tell you everything about that, but we don't have 3.5 hours today. The thing about accountability in a nutshell is being able to answer the question, so what? And that is, if I do a good job, so what? And if I don't do as well as I could have or as what is expected of me, so what?
Yep.
So lots of leaders tell me, I get that if it's really bad, I can fire someone. Like I don't want to do that, but I understand that's kind of like the ultimate accountability. I get if someone's like done really, really well, I could maybe give them a pay rise or a promotion, but I don't really know what's in between. So that's what we do in our Growth Collective workshop is we actually spend time brainstorming like up to 70 different interventions. Sorry, I'm so HR, I know, but different actions that you could take to tell, for the so what. So some, we've already talked about telling people that they've done a good job or telling people when they've missed the mark. And those are like really important tools for accountability. My other big tips are actually saying to someone, great first go, I need you to do this again. What we'll often do as leaders is rescue. So we'll go, gosh, that's so far away from where I thought it would be. It'll be quicker to do it myself.
Yeah.
And that comes
very
to
common
4.
trap.
Yeah, totally. And sometimes it is, of course. So it's always quicker to do it yourself in a 24-hour time horizon. And so my challenge to you as a leader, is it quicker to do it yourself in a 6 or 12-month time horizon? Because when we do it ourselves, the other person will never be able to do it.
Absolutely.
Because we learn through experience and repetition.
Yeah.
And I really recommend as well, particularly if you're working documents, that change from the red pen to the comment. Because that's learning, right? That's if I look at a sentence or a paragraph and I rewrite it, yeah, maybe someone will learn by reading what I've written. But if I actually put a comment that says, this isn't, oh, I'm actually finding it a bit hard to follow this. Could you have another go at making it clearer? Or I'm not sure if this is what the client is looking for. Could you rewrite this focusing on X? When I get that as the employee, I have to actually think about it.
Totally.
I have to think about, what does the client want? How could we do it better?
Yeah.
And then when I do it again, it might not be perfect. It's probably not how you as a leader would have done it. It's probably not to your level of expertise as one would expect that it wouldn't be. Like you probably have been doing it longer. You probably have more specific skills at it. But it means that maybe over time that employee will get to a point where they can actually do that piece of work that you need them to do. And that comes to our 4th thing, which is the top 3 are great at driving performance, getting outcomes from people. But number 4 is really important because that's where we help people grow. And the way that we can do this in lots of different ways. I'm sure lots of people are familiar with the 70-20-10 model of learning.
Yep.
Lots of us think that doing a course, formal learning, doing a master's is a way to learn things. People learn best on the job. So 70% of learning should be on the job. And that's why they're like doing it again. Come and watch me do it. You have a go, I'll watch. All of that kind of stuff is really, really critical. And so what we can actually do to get out of people's way as leaders is instead of saying, this is how I've done it. So that's advice. This is how I've done it. You should do it like this. Is saying, how do you think that you might do that differently? So what we want with the coaching question is we want the leader to set the expectation. This is what I need from you, because that's fine. That's absolutely your job as a leader. This is what I need from you. The coaching questions is, how do you think that you'll get there in a way that uses your strengths and skills? And if someone's really stuck, I do like to ask. So we're getting little micro yeses. The brain's not triggered for defensiveness then.
Yep.
So I like to ask, would it be helpful for me to tell you how I've done this in the past?
Yep.
And that's when I might share some advice.
Yep.
But do you want to start with that coaching question? How might you do it?
I love that. I have found in my time, when you talk back to the expectations, so if we kind of follow this kind of framework, the expectation that we would set, if I know that someone's doing something for the first time, I will say, you know what, we're probably going to get this kind of wrong 5 times.
Yeah.
We're going to have a go at this 5 times, 7 times, whatever that number looks like. I'm not expecting it to be perfect straight away. But I'm here if you want to reach out. If you want to brainstorm some ways that we can do that, just you need to let me know where I can help you and support you. I want you to have a crack. But it's not, you know what I mean? It's that setting that expectation. You can ask me as many questions as you need. We can build this together as we go. I'm happy for you to run. The expectation is it won't be perfect. I'm okay with that. Let's build as we go.
That's such a great example of setting expectations too, because it's really helpful for people to know where you expect them to be, and also saying, you know, I'm not expecting you to do it at the same level that I do, or maybe there's a colleague who's, you know, been here for longer or whatever, particularly with new employees, being like, I do expect that there's going to be some onboarding time for you to kind of understand the organization, get up to speed. Yeah, that's great. What a good tip.
Oh, I love that one. I love that.
To the next slide.
Sorry. Yeah, I just think like that is such a, like you say, it's not rocket science. The whole, you know, clarity, feedback, accountability and support, it just really kind of sets a really strong foundation and simple foundation to build from. I really love that. So thanks for sharing that. In there was like hints of managers being kind of really key to strong team communication. I was hoping you could kind of go into a bit more detail about that one for us, please.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got this great research here from Gallup that 70% of the variance in team engagement is determined by the manager. And there's that mix of, isn't it great how important you are to people? And whew, what a responsibility.
Absolutely.
And I think if we think about our experiences and our careers and moving through the workplace, we know that the person that we report to is, you know, we spend a lot of time with them. Our view of the organizational world, you know, the ecosystem we're in, we rely on them so much to give us context and information. We get the things that we love about work, you know, reward and recognition and validation and feedback, and am I making an impact? In most places that's channeled through managers. So when we think about our experiences, it makes sense that that's what impact that managers have. I think that then when we get our first management or leadership position, it can be hard for us to translate that, because we think, I'm just a person who doesn't know what they're doing. Like, why do you, you know, why is everyone relying on me so much? Why am I impacting people so much?
And also relying on me in different ways. How do I be this different person to these different people who need different things from me? It's definitely a tricky thing to navigate.
And there's some really interesting research about bullying. And sorry, it's like, why is she talking about bullying in this positive psychology conversation? But I think it's really great research because it shows us, gosh, whose is that research from? I'll have to dig it out. It actually says that about 90% of that behavior is unintended. And it usually comes from leaders who are stressed, like so everyone, and who struggle to manage their reactivity. Also not something that generationally we were taught as children. It's really interesting that kids are being taught so much more about that now.
Love it.
But so there's that kind of just, I don't know how to manage my stress, and that has an impact on others. And then the second biggest category is what I'm going to call stubbornness. So like, that's just who I am, and everyone else can deal with it. And the challenge with that is that there's this kind of idea of the golden rule. So it's not treat people like how you would want to be treated. It's treat someone how they would want to be treated. And that's honestly, I think, a lifelong learning in leadership. It's hard. It's hard
Definitely.
to do. It's hard to guess what someone else might look to you for. And so my big tip on that, in this short time we have together, is ask people. I think as a leader, the questions you want to ask your people is, how do you like receiving information? How do you like receiving feedback? And how do you like giving feedback? Because sometimes we actually want to receive feedback in a different way than how we want to give feedback. So we're so
Totally.
complex as human beings. That's why leadership's so tricky.
And then add life moments onto that, which adds to the stress. So I think, no, to your point, asking the question and again, just setting that expectation really clear from the get-go, allowing them to set their expectation with you and your expectation with them, will avoid any of the kind of future resentment. I heard something, I can't remember where it was, but it was like an unsaid expectation is a future resentment. And I love
I
that.
love that.
Love that.
Absolutely.
Because it's so true. It's so true. So if we get our expectations clear on all of it, we should be happy days. But okay, so we've spoken about that. I think there's always going to. I think in my time, I have kind of seen and experienced and heard that we kind of know people don't generally leave jobs. They usually leave people. So I think your points there around how we can kind of up our ante in terms of how we engage with people will just really help us to kind of put ourselves in a much better position to retain our people. So thanks for sharing that. But we're always going to come up against tricky people, tricky situations, difficult conversations. So can you just share with us what your insights are into how we can have those tough conversations without damaging our relationships? Because I think that's a really critical thing that we need to build on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this comment because it describes why this stuff happens in the workplace. So if we've got two people, and one's just saying, oh, we should do it this way, and the other person saying, no, we should do it this way. So that should happen in workplaces, right?
Yeah, all the time.
What happens for us is task conflict. So how should we do it? Process conflict. So what should we do? Task conflict, what should we do? Process conflict, how should we do it? The keys to innovation. Every single thing that is around my desk now has come from someone saying, like this glass, we should have a receptacle to put our water in, that we didn't have before. And then we should make it out of something different. And then this one looks beautiful, so we should make this in like a different way. So we need those things for progress, but it's really hard for the human brain to have those. So those are healthy conflict, task conflict, process conflict. The human brain so easily goes into relationship conflict. You don't like the receptacle that I have made for water, you mustn't like me as a person.
Oh, we're fascinating.
Yeah, and that's why we're scared. We're a bit scared of disagreement. And as a leader, we think, someone already asked, what do I do when my team hears my feedback and says, you're wrong? You're wrong about that. And so I think it's so important to know that these conflict things are happening, and we want to try to stick in functional conflict and not move into dysfunctional conflict. So in the time we've got today, my top tip for doing that is stating your intention. Okay. So I go into a conversation with you, Shez, and I want to say, you did a really great job on this, but actually, that comment you made to a client, I think you could have done that differently. Okay.
Mm.
I could not tell you that. I thought that because what if you're mad at me? What if you don't like it? What if it all goes really badly? All right. So when I'm giving you feedback, when I'm sharing feedback with you, I'm actually taking a risk. I'm taking this risk of telling the truth. So when I walk into that conversation with you, I know that my intention is for you to improve and grow because I care about you.
Yep.
That's why I bothered.
Yep.
Okay. We don't say that.
No.
We don't tell people. that's why. And so that's my big advice to you as a leader. Like, think about, why am I risking this? And start your conversations with that. Now, someone said, how do we say things that are not BS, workplace jargon? So I'm just nervous that I probably got someone here.
Look, we can be creative behind the scenes
That's right.
on how we change some of the language.
I've tried to make them, it's like, I guess, simple and short, because I don't think we have to label these points. But when we start with intention, what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep people calm and grounded and safe, so that we don't go into like, what a jerk.
Yep. No, I like that.
So here's some examples. Like, I care about our relationships. I wanted to talk to you about blah. I think you have great potential, so I wanted to share my observations that I know this piece of work is really important to you. It's important to me too. So let's talk about how I could do it differently or better. Okay. And for the person who asked about pushback or resistance, I would keep coming back to intention, and I would actually say things like, look, I could have not shared this with you, but I decided to because I really want you to improve, or because I think it's better that you know.
Yeah. Well, I think to your point earlier, right, setting the expectation on how you want to receive feedback,
Yeah,
when you want to receive feedback, you've kind of set you've set up an agreement, if you like, in the early days around how and when and why you would bring feedback into those conversations. So I think having that base point to then draw back on will also help with the intent of the feedback. Remember, we said that we were going to give feedback.
yeah,
This is an opportunity, not those words, but this is an opportunity for us to share
yeah.
that.
I think those words are fine about, yeah, we've talked about how we're going to do it, and so I'm attempting to do it in the way that you asked me to.
Yeah.
I think the thing about pushback and resistance, those were like specific words that used, is some people need time to process so that they can move out of defensiveness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the neuroscience is that our brain doesn't know the difference between physical pain, breaking my arm, and Shez, you're my leader and you're disappointed in me.
Yeah. Wow.
My brain is like, danger, danger.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess we'll never know why our brains were developed in specific ways, but the theory around it is, if I get kicked out of the tribe from an evolutionary perspective, like, I will die. So dark. But I think that's why, like, Tom Harkin from Tomorrow Architect talks about, we move through the world with this ancient hardware.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
our
Wow.
brain is still like, I've got to belong.
Yeah.
I need to be accepted and I need to belong. So when you're telling me that my writing could be more concise, there's like some old wiring that's going like, no, this is dangerous.
Totally.
So,
Yeah, you go.
So for people who then we get to like fight, flight, fight, freeze, fawn. What do we do in dysfunction? And we all have dysfunction. So from the people who kind of want to argue with you about stuff, I would really recommend for those people, go, look, I've shared with you what I wanted to share. Go and have a think about it. Maybe there's some more information you have for me. And then be really specific. Let's talk about it tomorrow, next week.
Yeah.
So give some time and space, but don't like lose the leadership thread.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we don't want to signal to people that, oh, well, if you kind of react in a certain way, then like I know that no longer need to lead you.
Yeah.
We want to say to people like, all right, think about it, but we're going to talk about it again.
Yeah, and that's going to vary from person to person. So I think absolutely get to know your people and understand how they kind of respond, react, because some will respond, some will be very self-aware, and they'll have a considered reaction. Others will fly off the handle. But we as leaders need to know how those people interact. Something that I've found really helpful in those types of moments is, how do you think you went there? How do you think that meeting went? How'd you go, like, having a crack at that new task that you've done? Tell me what your thoughts were, and then I hear how they felt they went, and sometimes it's aligned, which then makes that difficult conversation easier because they already know that they haven't quite hit the mark. Then it does come a little bit difficult where where the feedback needs to be different to their take on it. But at least you've then got a baseline position to start from in terms of how they may receive the feedback that you feel you need to give. So that's
And
always been helpful.
what a great kind of practical example about using a coaching question to open up a conversation.
Yeah.
You've also made me think about the other response that it still is not functional that people have, but we as a leader don't mind it, is sometimes we'll go into fawn or ingratiating. So there will be some people who hear our feedback and don't agree with it, but that it's not their kind of wide response to tell you that.
Yeah.
And so I do think that question about what's your perspective on that, maybe there's some information I'm missing, is really useful. And that's what we do want to go with feedback. We want to say, here's the expectations I had. This is what I observed or noticed. What do you think? Like, we want to move from information delivery into conversation pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that, and then we can, then when we've got the next step plan, in most circumstances, we want to be coaching questions around what's the next step.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's where you build that level of self-awareness with your people. You help them to grow, help them to understand, where they can improve, where they nailed it, and feel good about themselves. So no, I absolutely think that they're helpful, and I think that helps to communicate your intention.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
like that.
role modeling some expectation setting. We're going to be asking for your questions in probably like 3 minutes. So start having a think if you've got any. We've got some from earlier to pick up. I just realized I didn't read this amazing statement from that Adam Grant talks about a lot from some research that he's come across, which is, I'm giving you these comments because I have very high expectations of you and I know that you can reach them.
Love that.
Yeah, and there's research on the effectiveness of that particular statement, which is so practical. I hope more people do really practical research like this.
Yeah, well, that aspect. I mean, it's more so for people that get that extrinsic kind of validation. My God, they believe in me. They see my potential. They think I can do it. Now I can. You know what I mean? If they think I can do it, surely I can at least have a go. There's definite power in that statement. Definite
All right,
power.
awesome.
Do we want to jump to some of the questions? Do you want to wrap up what we've covered, and then we can jump into some questions?
Yep. So here's what we've covered today. So we talked about 4 steps to drive performance. We talked about why leaders are important. We talked about why it's hard to have tough conversations. So just know you're not alone in that. And how to use intention to move from awkward to compassionate. So we'd love to hear your questions. I'm going to put up the next slide, which just has a QR code if you want to download these slides and some other little tips. So I'm going to keep that there because sometimes that can take time, and then we can answer any questions you have. So we've already got one from Rebecca, and maybe Renee, you want to pull out some questions for us too.
I think there's a question here that I'm not quite sure, and you've asked me to call you out on it, so I am. You set the expectation, I will deliver. Damien's mentioned leaders effectively cultivating a culture of open communication and connection within those remote and hybrid work environments. So have you got any insights on how best we can do that specifically?
Yeah, great. So I think it's just an extension of the skills and tools we already have. So when we add in kind of virtual and technology into the ways that we're working, I think those questions about how do you want to give feedback and how do you want to communicate with each other are even more important. Because then it's like, is it phone call? Is it video call? Does it need to be face to face? And then in hybrid environments or fully remote environments, I think it's even more important to have really good rhythms around one-on-one catch-ups. So lots of leaders say to me, do you really have to have a one-on-one catch-up? How often do you have to have one? And of course, there's no law that requires you to have a one-on-one catch-up. But it's just such a good rhythm. Like if you have a good one-on-one catch-up rhythm, then everyone gets really comfortable. Like that is the space where I'll go, oh, and the week just gone, like here's the 5 things you did great and here's the one thing that I would change.
Yeah.
I think in hybrid environments, those are even more important to have good rhythms about. And I think the other thing about hybrid environments is, like, how are you going to make sure you don't lose connection and fun?
Yeah.
And and you know what, guys, drop in the chat if your organization or if your team does good stuff around this. They're always the simple techniques, you know, the like Monday morning meme share, that the kind of culture about when people sign in, they do go into the team chat and say, hey guys, good morning, you know, how's your day today? What is it that you're going to do to keep connection and fun? Because if you have those good relationships, we're less likely to go into relationship conflict.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think to your point with those catch ups, again, intention of these catch ups are to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. So again, setting the expectation, the intention's clear, that type of stuff is quite helpful. We've got a question from Genevieve. If you're new to leadership, what advice would you give on the focus areas?
Yeah, I love this. I work a lot with new leaders. I really enjoy it. And our Leadership Fundamentals program is really pitched at that new to leadership level. And I think that's one of, you know, the obvious things is that new leaders don't get training very often. You know, we did a poll on this on LinkedIn recently, and I think only 17% of people felt like they had received adequate training in a new leadership role.
Yep.
So, you know, in that 70-20-10 model, you are stepping into a completely new thing, and lots of us lead intuitively. But if you can give new leaders actually some good tools and framework, that's really helpful. So that's my soapbox on that. But new leaders, I think the query they often have is like, what is the work? So that might sound a bit existential, but usually they're really good individual contributors. They're really good at technical skills. Like, they're good at whatever they were doing, you know, marketing, comms, IT, accounting, whatever it is. And so they get into the leadership role, and I hear from them so regularly, gosh, everyone's so annoying because they're stopping me from doing my work.
So
And
true.
I think it's helping new leaders understand that leadership is part of their work and part of
Yep.
their role. And then being kind of really helping them be clear about what that actually means. So, you know, that the framework for driving performance that we just went through, I think it can help to articulate, like, actually, as this leader of your team, it is your job to set these expectations, to give these feedback, and to help people, to hold people accountable and help them develop their skills. And that takes time, and I'd expect you to be spending time on that. Like, I think those are really good focus areas to start with, like, what is the role? What does it mean to be a leader? And then we can start building in more sophisticated, leadership practices.
No, I love that. I love that. Again, so simple, and that it helps you kind of, as you've understood the role and what's involved in terms of how you like lean into that, then there becomes like, well, what type of leader do I want to be? What's my
Mm.
leadership style going to look like? Something that I've found really helpful, especially with managing new people, new teams, is understanding their communication styles. Because we've spoken about at length
Yeah.
communication being really, really important. And there's a whole bunch of frameworks out there that you can leverage to kind of understand that. You can do little workshops with people, the DISC profiles, all of that type of stuff. But I've found that leaning into new teams with new people, understanding their different communication styles and understanding how I can then adapt to those different communication styles and personality styles and whatnot, has been really, really helpful from
Yeah.
a new leadership perspective.
Yes, almost every mediation I do, I could probably diagnose as a communication style mismatch. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then there's a bringing that team together to then have a shared understanding within the group on how people like to receive information, give information, make decisions. That has been really powerful and really helpful in the past, for myself and for other leaders that I work with or for.
And like, it's a constant learning and reflection. Like, even in my leadership practice, I'll be like, oh, I didn't adjust enough there.
Absolutely, absolutely. We can catch ourselves. We've got a question from India, which is very similar, I think, to one that Emily has mentioned as well. But how do we best respond to someone who disagrees with our feedback? And that sense of, yeah.
So, and hi, India. I was just chatting to India this morning. Thanks for coming. So I actually think that when we've got this disagreement and feedback, which is really common, and there's this great article, what's it called? I think it's called Delivering Bad News a Different Way. Sorry, Renee's probably like, who didn't say mention that before? It's by someone called Manzoni, I think is the researcher. But it has this cool graphic in it, which is called scripted escalation. And it's like what you, so where's my camera? It's almost what you said before, Shaz, which is I ask them how they think they went so that we can be as close together and understanding as possible. But usually employee and employer are like this. So I think I did a terrible job and I think you did okay, or I think I did a great job and I think you did okay. And often as we get through feedback and we start arguing about who's whether great or okay are the proper characterization of how I went, we actually get further and further apart in our views, because then I double down and I'm like, no, it was amazing and this is why. And you're like, no, you've really got some things you need to work on. So thanks, India. Great question. My tip for this is like not to dwell too much in that argument about the facts. And some people talking about BS business jargon have start to talk about this idea of feed forward. And like, I feel a little like, ugh, but the concept makes heaps of sense, which is, okay, why do we give feedback? Feedback's about the future. So if we can't agree on, I guess, the fact of what happened in the past, did you do a good job or not? I would focus a conversation about, okay, can we agree about the goal in the future? So maybe my feedback is how you talk to a client. Mm-hmm. And I think that you came across as a bit abrupt and you think that you didn't. So instead of us kind of really getting into who's right and wrong about that, I mean, it's important for leaders to deliver the information. And I go back to intention, which is, well, I actually just wanted to let you know my perspective on that because, I care about your reputation, and also client service is a big part of the role. So I wanted to share my insights, but let's agree on what skills we need to see moving forward. So the ultimate outcome is the client happy? I'm making these all very simplistic. But okay, we can agree that the outcome is that our client feels valued and respected. Like, do we agree on that?
Yep.
It's hard not to agree with that. So, okay. And how, what do you think you do well on that? And what do you think you might do differently? So we've got the kind of goal and the coaching question. So that would be my tip about when someone doesn't agree. And the same with if you don't agree with feedback you've been given, I think there's usually what then happens is a leader wants you to do something in the same way that they do. And once again, I'd go to outcome, which is, okay, thanks, I've heard you.
Yep.
The way you do it, I don't think that's going to fit with my style. Like, either let me think about how I might reach the outcome.
Love it.
Or I'm going to try this.
Yep.
Next, what do you think? Yeah.
Love it.
So that was helpful.
We want the fence to be painted white. You prefer to use a roller, but I want to use a paintbrush. We're still going to get to same outcome. Are we okay with the quality of a roller and a paintbrush? Does that matter? You know what I mean? Like, I think that is so important. Like, and us as leaders need to be okay with knowing that someone might do it better than us, and that's great if they do. I think sometimes ego comes into it. What? I used to do that, and I can do. We've got to let go of all of that, empower our people, because especially with the movement of technology, there are going to be so many different, better, more efficient, more effective ways to get to an outcome. And if we as leaders can be open to continuously learning and learning from our people, I think that's a really strong position for us to be in, and people will want to work with and for us if we empower them in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got one from Rebecca. What steps can we take to address communication barriers and misunderstandings that arise within our team or organisation? So is this more of a team question versus an individual? I would take it as that. Do you have any tips on that?
It's like I'm such a direct communicator, but I do just really like. So there's this idea in coaching we have of making the implicit explicit. So it's like what's implied that could be said expressly. So, and I really like the phrase "I notice." So, or I'm wondering.
Oh, I love
So I
that.
think
Curiosity.
Rebecca, like if that is feeling like I would just be saying, I'm wondering if we've had a miscommunication. Yeah, or I'm wondering if you think I've said something differently. Sometimes the other good phrase is like, "Oh, I'm surprised by that. Like,
Yep.
I appear to have upset you. Like, I'm surprised by that." And then intention, like, that wasn't what I intended.
Mm.
Can you talk me through how that felt for you?
No, I
Or
like that.
can you talk me through why that seemed to offend you? And then a great technique for talking through those kind of things or thinking about those things is the scarf model. Have you
Okay.
come across that before, Shez? Sorry, and now I'm
No, I've
going to
not.
have to test myself. Are you ready?
Go.
The scarf is, I think, it's like status, certainty. Come on, there must be some scarf people in here. You can help. A. Fairness is F. So I haven't Googled the scarf model, but it basically is this idea that there are different things that are important to us. So if I really value status, and you don't, Jez, you might actually trip over a tripwire, because when you give me feedback in front of someone else, my status has been diminished or risked in my view. So that could really offend or upset me. Oh, thanks, Renee, you're the best. But you might think, Shez, like, what's happening? This is a absolutely unpredictable result. So that's another great tool. Rebecca, thanks for that question about having some ways that you talk about these things in your organization and team. And the SCARF model is just one of heaps of models.
And again, I'm going to keep coming back to it, but there's an element of being a good leader to understand our people, understand those different people, because we've said it before, but a one size does not fit all in this type of way, and that's the trickiness, because we will default to ours, and it's not a one size fits all, so it is tricky. It is absolutely tricky.
And that brings me back to Genevieve's question about what should we be asking new leaders to focus on. And I think for new leaders, telling them that one of the biggest parts of your role now is knowing your people, that's really powerful as well. Like, that's a big part of your job now, is knowing these people. What do they care about? What motivates them? What upsets them? That's just a huge part of the job now. And I think when we do our first leadership role, that can be a little bit shocking, actually, or we hadn't anticipated that was part of the job.
And then I think there's a whole bunch of tools and stuff that we can use to help identify the needs of our people. But what tips have you got for us as leaders when we have to actually lean in and adapt our communication style or our management style, our leadership style? What sorts of things can we lean on as individuals to try and adapt our style to our people?
Yeah, I think most of the quadrant models have this idea. So like your Myers-Briggs, your DISC, your HBDI, most of them have, and I'm going to be butchering them, but this idea that individuals are motivated by people, so really care about relationships. Outcomes, I'm really into results, like feelings, enthusiasm, energy, fun, or like facts and details. So almost all quadrant models kind of cover that. Yep. So I think as a leader, if you want to start with adjusting style, it is, most of us will go to a particular corner, but just, okay, when I think about this piece of work or this message I want to deliver, what's important about it in the 4 quadrants? So if I was focusing on relationships, what would it be? What would be important about this piece of work? If I was focusing on facts and details, what would matter? If I was focusing on energy and fun, what would that look like? And if I was focusing on results and outcome, because in the strategic communications program that we run for individual contributors, we help them deliver messages that hit all 4 of those points.
Love it.
And so I mean, I know you can't cater to everyone at every time, but if you can kind of become a more holistic in your thinking, you can be kind of hitting more people's motivations and passions and interests more regularly.
And coming up against less resistance.
Yeah.
Less resistance. I love that. We don't have any more. Does anybody have any more questions? We'll give a couple more minutes to pop any more questions in the chat. And whilst we're doing that, because we've only got a few minutes left, I hear that you are launching a podcast in the next couple of weeks. I got a sneaky email giving me a heads up on that. Did you want to talk us through what you've got coming up in the next couple of weeks?
Yes, it's so funny. I always love telling people about my work, but this is stretching me a bit outside my comfort zone.
Love it.
And I try not to I really do try to hold myself accountable to not having like a corporate persona and a life persona, because I'm a big believer in that. But sometimes things, there's a lot of social conditioning in there. So my beautiful sister, who lives in London, over time has become a real expert in astrology, which is not something I ever thought that I would know about. And so we have a podcast together where we answer listeners' questions, and we so she takes a cosmic lens and I take a corporate lens. And yeah, it's really fun. And it's been interesting when I posted on LinkedIn that we had this podcast coming out, how many people that I work with in business were like, oh, I have to tell you about the psychic I saw. I have to tell you about, my crystal collection. And I'm a really big believer on like, we don't have to be one thing or another, or we can like explore other ideas. And, some things that she talks about I don't understand or are a bit far for me, and some things that I talk about she's like, that sounds really boring. So yes, our podcast is called I'll Ask My Sister. So we have a trailer up on Spotify and Apple, and you can go and subscribe if you want to see it when it comes out on the 26th of March. So thanks for the opportunity for me to just practice being more comfortable with that.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that sounds so exciting. Honestly, well done. Good job.
Thank you.
I will definitely be signing up to that, because I too, as I get older, I'm not going to say it, as I get older, my mind is more open to the different things that this universe can provide it, be it, the greater divine and the more practical, proven approaches. So I love that you're blending the two together. Really appreciate that. Well, if there's no more questions that have come in, we might have to wrap up. So if you do have any other questions that you haven't had a chance to ask, feel free to reach out, connect in with Ellen or myself, and we'd be happy to continue the conversation. But Ellen, thank you so much for giving us your time this morning. It's been such a good conversation. I know that I've taken away some really great insight in order to drive those better conversations with our people, and I'm sure our audience has too. Thank you to those people that have popped the questions in and participated in our conversation this morning. Feel free to check out, not make sure, but check out our website. Check out our website. It's very directive. At talenza.com.au, our LinkedIn page, and we've got a YouTube channel where this a recording of this webinar will be up there, and we'll be sure to share via email some of the resources and stuff that we've spoken about in this webinar, and make sure that you've got all the information that you need to have. But thank you, Ellen. Really appreciate it. Great chat. And
you're so welcome. And feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I know that people kind of have different etiquette about that, but I love connecting with people I've come into contact with, even if it's in a forum like this. So do feel free to connect and have a chat. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Love it. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great Thursday, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.